everyone else had gone up into the bar to have a beer, and I sort of wandered into the shower, feeling pretty sorry for myself, and there was just Phil lathering himself up afterwards. That's just topped it off. It's the worst show on, Phil.
Thank you to our 3 sponsors for supporting our podcast. John Russell's Art Caterers and Milltown Pies, who offer fantastic catering services, Alexander Grace Law, who provide modern and client-led legal services, and SPE Furnishings, who offer high-quality furnishings and electrical items at fantastic prices.
Gordon, send Lowerhouse to save the house. Come on, the house!
Good afternoon or good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Housecast, another podcast that we're putting together. We've got a few ready to go now. Obviously, we've got 13 or 14 out now. If people keep with the feedback of how they're enjoying them and subscribe to their own providers, it does help us out a lot. Really appreciate all the feedback. The vast majority of it's positive, and we're enjoying doing them, and we'll keep doing them for the foreseeable. So today we've got a special guest on, a young lad who pro'd for us a number of years ago. A lot of us have not seen him for quite a while, maybe had the odd conversation, but I'll come on to him in a minute. We've got some great co-presenters with us today, some proper legends of cricket. Stanley, how are you doing?
I'm okay. How are you, Jez?
Yeah, fine, thank you. Not a great deal changed from the last time. Anything extraordinary that you've done differently from last time?
Well, I've had a few complaints from my last appearance on the podcast about my bad language.
Really? Who's asking me from?
Yeah, from my mum, from Anne Cochran, Barbara Hudson, Auntie Margaret.
Oh dear.
I've also had a lot of complaints off Sharon. She hasn't actually watched the podcast. She just complains, Jez.
Well, that's good. Watching a podcast to be clever.
Well, listen, should I say?
So you're in trouble?
All the time, Jez.
I'm sure you can talk your way out of it.
Oh, sweet. Still a sweet talker.
Always a sweet talker, Stanley. So we go right down south of the country, and we've got Gary Morehouse back with us. Gary, thanks for helping out again. Anything changed down in Devon?
Nothing yet, Jez. 4th of July is when it'll all explode, when people can come on their lollipops. We'll see what happens then. We haven't had anything like Bournemouth and Brighton beaches, where people seem to be behaving themselves at the moment. But yeah, we'll see on 4th of July, I reckon.
Yeah, the site's opening then?
I believe so, yeah. I think they've obviously got to do certain personal space, social distancing, 50% capacity, that type of thing. Yeah. And a lot of them their facilities won't open, I don't think, in the sense of communal areas. But yeah, we'll see. Yeah,
well, let's have a look.
Yeah, I hope so, everyone's safe.
Then a further co-presenters to speak to our special guest, the one and only Chris Bleazard. How are you doing, Chris?
Very well, Jeremy. Very well.
Good. You much to report?
No. Played a bit of golf. Now we're all laid back on the course.
Yeah.
Played with Francois, Johnny Whitehead and Dooch on Friday at Clitheroe.
Right, lovely. How did that go?
Remarkably, I bought a new putter and it sort of worked for a change. I'm sure it'll go in the bin next time I play, but it worked for a day. So.
Good lad. I see you're still being spoilt. Lindsay bringing you the biggest bacon butty in the world.
It's sausage butty and I made it. She basically passed it to me.
Yeah, whatever you say. So anyway, let's go on to our guest. This podcast is going to be about this individual. Came over to Lowerhouse, proing for us in the early 90s. From Australia, 1995 he came over. It's the one and only Shawn Flegler. How you doing, Flags?
Very good, Jez, and hello to all the other guys. Yeah, good to be here. Good to see you guys. 25 years ago, that's crazy.
25 years ago.
Yeah, I
25.
don't know where that one's gone.
There's a lot less air on these screens, isn't there?
And a lot more glasses.
I'm really good, and yeah, great to be on here. Good to catch up with you all.
No, that's great, Flegs. Thanks very much for coming on and spending some time with us. It's Sunday evening over there now, so just really, how is things? We have, we've chatted to Ryan and to Andy MacDonald previously, and I think Australia have had it a little bit easier than we have in the UK. But how's it affected you personally? And I know you've 2 young girls. I believe, how are they going with it?
Yeah, I mean, I think we've been pretty lucky in Australia, obviously. Hasn't affected us as much as other spots around the world. So we're in Brisbane now. So, apart from homeschooling for about 6 or 7 weeks at the start of this term, we've been stuck at home. Work-wise, I'm at Cricket Australia. I went back to 2 days a week for the last few months and just working from home.
Yeah.
And there's been quite a bit of change at Cricket Australia. I think we might talk about that a little bit later, but everyone starts back full time from next week, and it's still pretty much working from home for the next couple of weeks, and then slowly people will come back into the office. But it's been pretty strange. You can walk down the street and everything seems normal, but probably about 6 or 7 weeks ago there was quite a strange period, wasn't it, when everyone was in the house and not getting out and pretty scared to go out at all. So really, really odd time, and you guys have been affected even more than us. So I'd hate to think what it's been like over there, to be honest.
Yeah, it has. It has been a difficult period for everyone, and it's so disappointing that the last update from Boris was that domestic cricket, still nowhere. It's not on the horizon at all for us to play, which is disappointing for us all, obviously. So, Fledge, you've mentioned there about Cricket Australia. You're the high performance manager, I believe. Is that right, for the women's cricket in Australia?
Yeah, that's right. So I started that role about 6.5 years ago.
Okay.
Yeah, so based up here at the National Cricket Centre, and another pro, Matthew Mott. He literally works about 3 metres away from me when we're in the office. So, and then Ryan obviously, was at Cricket Australia for a few years as well, and his role has just finished, unfortunately. But and now Andrew McDonald is an assistant coach, so it's quite bizarre. Some ex-pros who have all seen them join together and working at Cricket Australia. I have done. So.
Yeah, fantastic. So you've been doing that role for 6 years, you say?
Yeah, 6.5 years at CA. I worked for a few years. I did 1 year at Queensland Cricket just as a player development manager, and that's basically looking after players and their off-field pursuits.
Yeah.
Quite ironic. I had no idea what I was going to do in my life, and end up trying to help people do that.
Yeah.
And then before, I worked as a coach for 4 years at Cricket Victoria. So I was the second 11 coach, and when the Big Bash started up, I was an assistant coach to the Melbourne Stars as well. And before that, I was in IT for 7 or 8 years. A little bit strange working in IT. I've got no idea what I was doing in there, but did it for a few years. Yeah.
No, that's interesting. I've, looking at the research and, chatting to a few of the others, I think you do the similar job for Cricket Australia as Finchy does for England. Yeah,
I do. So it's good to catch up with Finchy. We see each other at most of the world events and the Ashes. I saw him last year, and a couple of tours to South Africa. I've seen him as well, so we speak to each other pretty regularly. So again, just cricket's fantastic for that, isn't it? You just this small little world, you just bump into people that have all these different connections. So he's a good guy, Finchy. Jury's out probably from you guys on him, but he's not a bad guy.
No, he's a great fella, and he's been a great asset to the cricket club. When he came to us, and the runs he scored and the wickets he scored, but he doesn't half talk a lot about the England ladies. He's non-stop telling us what he's doing. It's about right blessing dressing room as well, isn't it?
Absolutely. But it's always good if Fledge is struggling to sleep to have him on a loop, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah, just to get yourself sleep. So that's interesting, that, Shawn. So that's that's good, and let's hope that once all this is over, that things continue to go in the way that they are for yourself, and for the female cricket in Australia, and throughout the world. Before we go on to your cricket in prowesses at Lowerhouse, just want to give us a bit of a resume about yourself. I know you were at Victoria and at Queensland, I believe, when you're playing days. Just want to talk us through how you started cricket, where you first made a breakthrough, how your first class career went.
Yep, it's a pretty short-lived first class career, unfortunately. So I played most of my junior cricket in Queensland. So I grew up in Queensland, lived out in the country for a little bit, and then moved into Brisbane and played at Queensland Uni. So a couple of guys there, Michael Kastrovich was there, and a few other first-class players. So we had quite a good team then, and I was sort of in the state squad pretty early on, and went to the Cricket Academy in 1992. So some of the guys in the academy my year were McGrath and Ponting, the freak. He was just absolute standout. Funnily enough, McGrath probably wasn't the standout. He was just as he played his Test cricket, he was just relentless on a line and length. So you probably didn't recognise that at the time. But he had a insatiable work ethic and competitiveness that the best players have. So so those two guys were the standouts. I was in the Queensland squad for a few years. I played one game for Queensland. The year they won their Sheffield Shield, their Sheffield Shield in 94-95. So I came in for a guy called Paul Jackson, who was a left-arm spinner. He'd broken his finger the game before. They tried to keep it a secret for ages and end up making my debut with Matthew Mott and Andrew Simons in the same game at the SCG. So Alan Border was captain of Queensland, and we played against a full-strength New South Wales team. So Taylor, Slater, the War brothers, Michael Bevan, Greg Matthews, McGrath, Shane Lee. So they were a pretty good team, and we got beaten in about 3 days. I failed miserably. I didn't get a wicket. No runs, hardly any runs. Yeah, it was a nightmare. So that was the only game I played for Queensland. I was 12th man for a few games, 13th man for a few games. So I ended up moving to Victoria. So after I played for Lowerhouse, sort of 95, 96, the following winter, so 97, I moved to Melbourne.
Right.
And ended up playing a few games for Victoria, a few Shield games, and some one-dayers as well for, 3 or 4 years, and then finished up first class cricket. I actually haven't retired from first class cricket, so just in case, I don't think you ever retire, do you? So let's get moved on. So 2000, I think, was my last game.
Right.
For Victoria. So I mean, that was great. We won a one-day title in Victoria as well. That was good fun. So Shane Warne was there at the time. Got to play a few games with him as well. It was fun. It was a great time to be involved in cricket. It was just starting to come into the professionalisation of the game. So I think my last contract, I earned $12,500, and that was the big dollars back then. And then I had 2 shoulder operations, and I was umming and ahhing what to do because they used to offer contracts sort of in April. They'd offer 6 contracts, and then they'd hold off a few until September. And I just had a full Rico on my shoulder, and they said, "Oh, look, we're not going to offer you a contract in April, but see how you work over the winter, and you might be offered a contract in September." I was like, at the end of that season, I was deciding what I should do. Well, I should go back and go to uni and do something with my life. I was 28 at the time, and basically the director of cricket, Sean Graff, he's still there at Cricket Victoria now. He just said, "Look, you're 28. You're going to be there or thereabouts for a few years. You can either do that or you can get on with your life." So I ended up signing up to this IT course that was like, pay 10 grand and you get guaranteed a job at the end of months of study. So I was like, oh, shit, okay. 10 grand, I'm not getting paid a great deal. And then they have these clubs in Melbourne, sub-districts club. And this club just came out of the blue and said, oh, we'll give you 10 grand cash to play for us next season. And I was like, okay, well, I can take that, or I can get 12.5 grand with Victoria, maybe, if I find out in September. So end up taking the 10 grand cash to try and pay off the 10 grand that I paid for the IT course. And that was it, pretty much. So I played a bit more cricket after that, but I actually got into IT and worked in that for a bit. I met my then wife, or my now wife. I met her when I was in Melbourne, and so we decided we'd travel around the world. So I went and coached in Vancouver in Canada, and I had a coaching job lined up in Argentina for a bit that fell through, so ended up just traveling through South America, and then coached in Dublin, came back to Africa, and then played a couple more years of district cricket in Melbourne, and then got back into IT, I guess, and ended up working for Microsoft and Dell computers for a bit.
Yeah.
And then out of the blue, we're living in Sydney. I got a call out of the blue from Cricket Victoria saying, do you want to come back and coach? So I got a job back in coaching. Yeah, moved the family from Sydney back to Melbourne. Did that for a few years, and then got offered a job up in Queensland. It's been great. Cricket's given me a lot of stuff. I'm extremely fortunate. I work, I don't really call it work. I've worked in IT for 7 or 8 years and hated every day of it. I've worked in cricket for the last sort of 10 or 11 years, and it's been brilliant. I'm very, very fortunate that I get to do what I do. So.
Fantastic. Did you do your coaching badges before you finished, Flex, or after you'd finished in 2001ish?
I'd sort of done some coaching beforehand. So you have level 1, level 2, level 3 over here. So I think I'd done my level 2 when I was in Victoria, and then as soon as I started the coaching job in Melbourne, they just put me through a level 3 course then as well.
Yeah. You talked about your reconstruction on your shoulder. Was that an impact injury or just a wear and tear injury, Shawn?
I actually had an injury to my left shoulder, and the crap that I bowled, I think. So I had an operation that I had to get done on my left. So it was a slap lesion, a slap tear. So I had to get that done, and I was actually playing a game of touch football, so touch rugby. And I was actually with Moddy and a couple of other cricketers. And it was like 2 nights before I was supposed to get this operation done. And I actually went and dived in the corner and was thinking that I needed to dive and not land on my left shoulder, and went to dive on my right and actually hit my right shoulder, and I had to get a full Rico done on my right shoulder after doing it playing touch rugby. So they gave me the option. They said you could get both shoulders done at the same time. And at that time I was actually living with Moddy and another guy, John Davison, who played for Victoria and played for Canada. And so it was like, well, who's going to wipe my ass for the next 6 weeks? So I put off my left one, got my right one done, and then 12 months later I got my left one done.
I thought you were going to say you had them both done at the same time then, under anaesthetic.
So yeah, the right one was hard work. It was a full Rico. You're in a sling for 2 months, and that was pretty tough. The left one wasn't as bad. It was still can't throw properly from it. So
I just heard John Davidson mentioned there, and that name cropped up while you were at Lowerhouse. Did you end up in Canada because of John Davidson? Well,
probably really through him. He did play a few years in Canada. He played in Toronto. Another guy, called Brad Murphy, he's an Aussie guy who's a bit of a player manager as well. So he's placed a few players in England, and he coached over there for a couple of years. And it was just sort of out of the blue. He just said, "Oh, look, you're interested in playing in Canada." Yeah, it was outstanding. It was such a fun time, and it was really good for me at the time, because I'd become pretty bitter with the injuries that I had with cricket. And then you go to a place like that they're putting up sight screens, they're rolling out the coir matting and rolling the pitch before the game, and I was on the ride-on mower cutting the turf before the game. So it just reminded me of why I played the game. I really, really enjoyed it. So good fun, and Vancouver was an amazing place to live. It was beautiful. So
whereabouts in Vancouver were you, Flegs? Lindsay's got family over in Mission, so
right.
you've been over there quite a few times.
Yeah, we're in Kitsilano,
Yeah.
which is a really good spot. So we were there for most of the time, actually, in Kits. So really good. But Davo, who has also worked for Cricket Australia for quite a bit as well. So I played against him through youth cricket. He's from New South Wales. But so Modi, Davo and myself all lived in a house in Melbourne for a couple of years. And he lives in Brisbane now. He still coaches. You know, we're all sort of gone in the same circles for 25 years.
Yeah, that's interesting that, you know, the different cricket all over the world, and it's becoming more and more, you know, certainly with the franchise cricket, the T10s and the T20s that are propping up everywhere. I think Canada have only just recently had one, haven't they?
They have. I think their cricket's actually gone backwards a little bit. They had some really good players there for a while, and had quite a good setup. But there's lots of different factions. So on the West Coast, there's one faction. On the East Coast in Toronto, there's another one, and they're just fighting against her all the time. And it's the same in the US as well. I think they're trying. I think they've just put a few guys from the ICC into the US just to try and build that market a little bit better, because you've got guys in New York against the guys in San Francisco, and then blokes down in Florida. If you get that right, you know, the game is going to explode. So, but you know, the great thing about cricket, you can pretty much go anywhere in the world and you lob up and there's a game. Like when we were traveling through South America, I actually played a game in Santiago with this private golf club.
Yeah.
It was ridiculous. It cost about $40,000 US a year to join this, or to be in this golf club. And there's rugby fields and then these private cricket grounds. So they had all these expats coming in and playing, you know, 8 or 10 games of cricket for the summer. But it was, you know, I lobbed up with my backpack on, and it was very funny.
Mauling your Chinamans or your Wazims.
Bowled seam ups, little wasn't.
Yeah, I guess really it was just from your first class days, trying to make it in those years. How far ahead were you looking? Were you thinking of it being a permanent cricket? I know you dived into IT and it was like possibly like the financial reason. That deep inside you that you always wanted to stay in cricket and coach and do even or administration or anything just to do with cricket at all?
I always wanted to stay in the game if I could, and so I always coached even through, you know, my playing days towards the end as well. I sort of captain coach of Melbourne Uni for a couple of years, and that was probably a guy called Jeff Allardyce, who I lived with in Melbourne when I sort of first moved down to Melbourne. He's now the ICC general manager of cricket, and James Sutherland was the CEO of Cricket Australia. They both played at Melbourne Uni. I always wanted to sort of keep involved in cricket. I just didn't know how I'd do it. So it was good getting out of cricket and getting into IT. I think it just gave me a different perspective. Working at Microsoft, and you have all these Indian guys working at Microsoft, and you go down to lunch and, you know, I don't know, they end up finding out what you used to do, and they'd be sitting there going, "What are you doing? You know, working in IT? Why aren't you involved in cricket?"
Jerry Sutherland sub-pro'd for us at Rishton, didn't he?
Can you remember his claim?
So he bowled right-handed, I think.
Yeah.
And threw it left-handed, and who was it he ran out? Because they just didn't realise he's running around the boundary, so like third man or something. And obviously they knew he was right-hand bowler. So yeah, come on, 2. And he pings it about flat as you like over the top of the bails and runs this guy by half a pitch, left-handed.
Nicky and Charlie Frankenstein got stuck in a Waterloo. Charlie tossed one in the air and Frankie followed through.
What's your thought about corruption in these countries, the new countries that are coming up to play cricket? You know, there's this new European Super League, isn't there? Have you seen that?
It's the danger with it, isn't it? Maybe I was really naive, but when I played, that I just missed stuff. I don't know. Maybe I got some cheap wickets as well. I got Sanjay Mandraker out in Middlesbrough. he was not missing the bat. You know, he threw his way to 50 when I was playing at Middlesbrough, and then he just got out. And I'm like, how'd that happen? On the take.
You have a leather jacket on your coat when you're back in.
Yeah. So, it's crap. It's right to the top, I reckon. That's the scary stuff. So.
It is. It's actually surreal, and I mean, it's public record now. But about 2 years ago, I worked on a bribery investigation, and what the cricketer got sent to prison that I'd worked on. So I got really into it and worked out that, you know, it's clearly all the Indian bookmakers that are just targeting, you know, Asian, mainly Pakistani young cricketers that have been groomed from the start of their careers that you will do as we tell you.
Yeah, there's actually a real danger with women's cricket now because of, you know, there's quite a discrepancy between, you know, what we pay compared to some of the other countries.
Yeah.
And, you know, there's some huge viewing numbers now with the game, with the girls. So, yeah, they're right for the taking, to be honest. So, you know, Cricket Australia invests quite a bit of money into it, but I know other countries don't.
No.
It's a bit good to watch Finchie embroiled in some anti-corruption dispute.
Absolutely. Yeah.
doing 6 months.
You'll get rolled out.
Interesting. So, Flegs, you've done you've gone through the career, what you've done there, and it's interesting that you came to Lowerhouse in 1995. As we've just discussed off air, it's 25 years ago, and it seems unreal that it is that long ago. Can you just give us, the circumstances of how it came about, how you signed for Lowerhouse, and what the build-up was through the, from '94 maybe, from when you first got approached? So
I was playing at Middlesbrough in '94. The team had an unbelievable season, pretty much won everything apart from one, and we're in the semi-finals for some midweek cup, and everything else we won, we smashed it. Had a really, really good team. I was going to sign for them again, and I can't remember whether Renners must have approached me. I can't remember the timing of it, but I pretty much, for Middlesbrough, I'd said, all I want £500 more. I got £3,000 at Middlesbrough, and I was going to sign for £3,500, and they said, no, we'll give you £3,250. I went, right, okay. David got in touch with me somehow, and it turns out I think he actually came and watched me play, which I didn't know about. Yeah, I just had this offer from you guys, and I always wanted to play in the Lancashire League. I'd always heard about it, and it's a great league to play in. So I was really excited. I thought, brilliant, definitely want to play down there. It sounded like a really tough league. Some really good pros played there. I loved my 2 years at Lowerhouse, to be honest. I really.
That's interesting. I mean, Gary, obviously that was your second year as captain.
Yeah.
You had Craig Light the year before. I know it's difficult, I can't remember any of it, but can you remember any of the approaches? Because I know Renners, God rest his soul, he really had visions, but he kept everything to himself as far as I can remember. He would come up with this idea, right, we've got so-and-so that can bowl, so-and-so that can bat, we need this type of pro, and then just go off very successfully, I might add. Can you remember what happened around then, Gaz?
It was... We sat down and we just had a look. I would say it was a shit season results wise, and Craig, as good a talent as a batter as he was, obviously his head was in space somewhere. And he, we looked at it and we said, well, look, Baker have finished second or something, whoever it was, or and we finished second from bottom. What's the difference between the two sides? Okay, if they have Roger Harper there or somebody like that, then that's a pretty big difference. But when you look down at amateur for amateur, you Blaise, Peter Thompson, yourself, Jez, Dave Ormerod, you'd maybe Stan, Terry Lord or whatever, and you look down the averages and the results and the run scored. I know it doesn't tell you everything in terms of match situations, but you thought, well, everybody, those sort of people are contributing. They're on the first page of the league averages at the end of the season, etc., etc. Why are we 14 wins away from, their end of season? And we came down to it that we weren't competing on both sides of the ball. And from that, I think once we'd had that conversation, I think it was a case of getting a professional in. Obviously, there were other attributes we needed as far as youngsters coaching and getting the best out of the amateurs and really building something collective going forward. But I think once we'd had that discussion, I think he had it in his mind then to go and get a genuine all-rounder who, you know, if we screwed up in the first innings, we were still in it in the second innings because he can take 8 wickets or he can smash an 80 or whatever. Yeah. And I think that's where he set off. I don't think we ever discussed, do we need left arm, you know, spin, etc. I mean, that was a massive, you know, I think thing for us. You look at players around the time, Roscoe, Tracy, whatever, similar, who, you know, they did very well, didn't they, in the league for years as sort of left armers. And it was a very, you know, for an average amateur, you know, it was always a tricky prospect. So to get a quality pro left arm spinner, I think turned out to be a massive bonus for us as well. But, you know, you're right about Dave. He didn't really, oh, I'm looking at this person, what do you think of this person, whatever. He went off on a mission. And to be fair, you look at the people we had in that decade and Ken Smalley as well, you know, we got some quality people and you know, it was clearly at the time the overall average, the amateur strength that wasn't up to it. But yeah, I think signing a Shawn was perfect timing for us, perfect timing.
It was, and again, you know, it's not luck that Dave Wren found professionals like Flegs, because, you know, the amount of quality that we've had and that have been just right for us has been outstanding. So, and that is a theme that's running through these podcasts, you know, around how fantastic Renners was, and, you know, cracky, how much we miss him all. Can you remember much about that, Blaise, about that year? Because you were, you know, you're obviously doing extremely well, quite, you know, toward getting a lot of runs each year. Can you remember Flegs coming into the team?
Yeah, I can just remember the, you know, Shawn's enthusiasm, you know, and his sort of his joyousness of playing cricket, and, you know, his intensity, you know, how much he wanted to win, you know, and we probably weren't ready for that, you know, that massive switch. You know, we all got on board with it, but I don't think we had that sort of intensity behind us, and we got on board with it, and we really loved every minute of it. If we'd have had that 10 years later, I think it would have been far more successful. You know, maybe it was the quality wasn't quite there, or maybe it was the experience wasn't quite there. But, you know, for me, it was a joyous season just to have somebody care as much as we did.
Yeah, it's a good summary, that, Blaise, because that is, you know, albeit, you know, I wasn't a spring chicken back then, but it was a big change for us, weren't it? We've got Gary coming in, you know, Gary von Moorhausen, cracking the whip, banging everyone's heads together, and it's a complete change to what it had been, you know, for a decade before, where it was a little bit, you know, we fly by the seat of our pants, we train if we want to train, we don't train if we don't. But when Flegs came, I do remember that, you know, the nets were very well attended by all the players. What's your thoughts about it, Stanley? Because how old would you have been in 95?
22. No, I'd have been 21 in 95.
And you played quite
I was like 22 at the end of the season.
Yeah.
But it's just on what Blaise said, really. If you think back, we had Cameron, and a lot of us weren't quite ready for it. I think Cameron's intentions were well set, but I just didn't think, especially some of us younger players, then were quite ready for that because of what we've been brought up through.
Yeah.
The years leading up to it, we were like completely different. And then Craig Light didn't really sort of care that much about it to want to make anyone else better. So I always thought, once we got used to Flegs, which was pretty quickly, I think that's when it started. The improvement sort of started there, and how we went about things, and how you could get better as an individual.
You know, there's lots of people listen to the podcast, Flegs, so I'll just try and describe what type of cricketer I thought you were. You know, obviously very talented, bat, ball, fielding, absolutely outstanding. And when we say that Flegs influenced us, you know, immensely, he wasn't a shouter, he wasn't a screamer. It was just on the field. You knew he had your back. You knew that he was every ball was supporting every member of the team, and you just felt it from you. What were your initial thoughts, Flegs, when you came to the club and you met up with Gary and you saw the facilities etc. What were your initial thoughts, maybe compared with Middlesbrough?
So Middlesbrough was used as a county ground for Yorkshire.
All right.
So unbelievable wicket, outfield, outstanding, just very, very schmick. It was good. I remember David picked me up from the airport, and I reckon I went to the pub the first night. He dropped me in. I met a few of the guys that night. It's cool. Guys are good. And then I saw the ground and the big slope. And I was like, wow, this is different. But then I actually started thinking, well, how can I use that to my advantage a little bit as well? So I genuinely loved playing for Lowerhouse because, once you start playing, you hear people talking about it, and, you hear the other pros, you're playing for Toilet House. And I was just like, I loved playing at Lowerhouse. So that sort of gave me even more, I don't know, bit of shit about me, I think. I loved beating other teams. And I don't know, it was just a real genuine family club, Bomber and Jez, Matt, Nicky. I just, I love that about it. And, Gary was, I could tell, he was wanting to change things. So, I remember some early conversations. He was wanting to make a difference, and I really appreciate the words. I hope I did make some sort of difference. That's all you want to do as a player. You want to try and improve the team, and that's what I tried to do. And I've got a bit of white line fever, and that hasn't gone away probably. So
yeah, you did, Flex. You definitely did make a difference. And as we do for all these podcasts, we always between us do a little bit of research and look, and it brings back great memories. Me and Gary chat for hours about, cracky, look at the amount of runs Blaise got, or can you remember this game as you're reading through it? And there's some great stats throughout that season, and some decent pros. The first game of the season, just to bring it, I struggle to remember many of these, but playing Rottenstall away on the first game of the season, and you always, I think, underestimated your own bowling flags. But you got some serious wickets in that season, against some sides, and won some games for, your first game 31 for 3 off 13 overs, and we beat them with 25 overs to spare. I mean, I can't particularly remember it. Anyone else remember that game?
I can, because it was first ever game with fielding circle, weren't it?
Really?
And and I took a catch and didn't know if I could leap circle. ended up diving to catch it.
So, let's just get this right, Stanley. There's a T Skelton, caught Stansfield, ball Flegler.
Yeah.
The ball's gone up in the air at the 25-metre circle.
Possibly, yeah.
You need to get out of it to catch it, and what did you do?
I was at mid-off, and I was shouting to mid-on, which I think you were paying. Can I leave? Can I leave? Ended up diving backwards and catching it. Which were lucky, really, at that time. I was 50-50 around that time, but I held that one.
You get brought up now and then between Moddy and I, because you dropped it.
Yeah. That'd have been a worldie.
Was that Lowerhouse? I remember, I think I was celebrating beforehand.
Yeah.
And he dropped it. I lost.
My first memory of flags coming actually was sort of realising how astute we were, really. Because if you remember, and God knows we were Rangers, but they took us all off up to Scarborough. Can you remember that? They took us to Scarborough for a pre-season friendly.
Yeah.
And we were going sort of representing the Lancashire League at that point, and Scarborough decided they were going to beat us, and they'd bring us playing, and they'd like nobbled umpires. Scarborough were winning this game.
Can you remember what day it was, Stanley?
It was Easter Saturday.
Easter Saturday. We played Good Friday against the grammar school, Jez.
We had, yeah. We'd all been playing football at Belvedere, yeah. And
that was not a good journey up.
I can remember, and we got there, and if you remember, I said they brought some ringers in, but one of them weren't Roger Harper, and I'm going to have to bring him up. But I can remember Stan making a painstaking 60, which it felt like it took him best part of a week to compile whilst we were all sat there watching. But what I remember about Flegs, why he was so astute, because if you remember Matt was sort of social secretary then, weren't it? We all sort of danced to Matt's tune. And I can remember going in bar at Scarborough, and Matt had decided on way to Scarborough that we were stopping in Scarborough. So fair enough. And we was sat in the bar at Scarborough, and they clearly didn't want us there. So Matt said, well, I'll go out into Scarborough, I'll find some digs. I think he took Chippy with him, and they set off out into Scarborough. And I can remember Phil Astin saying, me, Flegs, Phil Astin sat there. And Phil Astin said, you'll not find anywhere because it's Easter weekend. 10 minutes later, door burst up, and Matt had found somewhere. And I think Flegs sort of said, I've got some friends I need to go and visit. And I'm thinking, he's only been here 48 hours, who can he be going to visit? So we got in this car, and we loaded the cars up and headed to this hotel, and we got there, and I'll never forget that the guy stood at the door, looked like Hagrid out at Harry Potter movies. And he took £12 a piece, I think there were 6 of us, and he took £12 a piece off us, did this guy. And he like lifted corrugated sheet back and let us in, and then he pissed off. There were no keys to rooms or anything. No one were given a key. So we went upstairs. We walked up these stairs, and we walked in. Payne kicks this door open. And I were in with Proc and Payne, and Payne kicks this door open. And I can remember turning to Proc and saying, "Have you got any Johnnies? Because I'm not sleeping in here tonight without a Johnny on." And I can remember thinking the day after on the way back to Burnley, I thought, this new lad's dodged a bullet here, because he's going to think we're absolute dickheads. And we had a good night, but we did have a good night in Scarborough. And he soon joined in with us, did Flegs after that. I mean, the other thing that night, we all ordered a taxi apiece. Went to a taxi rank and ordered 6 individual taxis and got them all to take us back to this hotel in a big convoy. And then when drivers realised what was going on, they sort of wanted to have a fight with us outside this hotel. We could have done trip in 2 taxis, and we took 6.
Good memory, that, Stanley. I mean, I remember the start of the season. Well, I don't remember it. Just through research we're doing, that we had quite a decent start, Gary. If I remember, we've won probably 8 of the first 10.
We did have a good start. You're right, and I think that summer was relatively decent weather.
Yeah.
I don't think there were overall those 2 seasons. Maybe I don't think there were many no-result games at all.
Yeah.
And so that helped. I'm not saying they were, hard bouncy wickets that a left-arm spinner would enjoy bowling on by any stretch. But I think it helped generally just in terms of having competitive games, full games that went the full distance. And we spoke about it before, there were some pretty good pros knocking around then, test players, etc. So it was even more encouraging that we had made a good start. Blazer contributed, doing his usual stuff. Stan and Nicky were playing reasonable at the top of the order. People who were chipping in lower down. The bowling wise was, I think, the biggest improvement for us. If you look at the overall stats, then I think it was always good to captain there. I always felt I had options.
Yeah.
Whether great if Shawn's time won't end up or your time won't end up. But with Matt and Stanley in particular, both chipping in for 20 odd, 30 odd wickets each season, you always felt you had options. And each one of the 4 of you bowling there were always capable of getting pros out as well. It wasn't just down to Shawn hopefully getting their pro and then we were in it. I think you look down the results, and I was really pleased with how the bowling lineup sort of came together. I think that made a big difference to the start.
We were practicing better as well, Gary. We were definitely at that point. We were definitely practicing better. That it did change. We in the first week.
We were, Stanley, but I don't think that had a massive instant effect. I think that took a while to get in. I think the fielding overall gradually did get hugely better. The catching, just the backing up, the throwing, despite some amazing practice sessions where we nearly killed about 4 people. With Flegs' innovative fielding regime and catching regimes.
I can remember us killing a cat.
Broken ankles, fingers.
Catches, Jesus, yeah.
I can remember us killing a cat when I bowled at Blaze, and you took a cat out of car park.
Yeah, so I think you're right, Jez. That start just helped probably get confidence shown. Feeling around the club, players all buying into everything, membership happy, at the right end of the table in the early parts of the season. I think it was a good start.
Yeah, I mean, you look at, like I said, and Flegs, you contributed straight away. You had a 7 for in fourth game. You had a 90, an 82 not out, 64 not out, 61. So, and you don't have league tables, do you? You don't see league tables after 6th game or 10th game. So it's difficult to know how we were going. And, we did finish 6th, but we were 3 points off 3rd, if you remember. It was all extremely tight. I do remember playing against Accrington at home, and they had Colin Miller. Can you remember that game, Flags?
I remember the away game. We beat them. I think I might have hit a 6 or something to win the game there. I remember that one. The one at home, I don't remember playing.
We beat them home and away. The game at home, we beat them by, and I'm just getting this from the stats. We beat them by 122 runs. Absolutely battered them. And I'm assuming Miller was bowling seam up there.
Colin Miller would have still been pissed, for sure.
Yeah, possibly. But he still bowled 19 overs and got 42.
Very good.
Yeah, we bashed him. I think Stan got a 50 there. Blaise got 60 odd. You got 60 odd. Yeah, we beat them there. And other pros. What's your memories around that season, Flags? That you've, whether a few bits and bats that you've read since, or what you can remember around it with the different pros and our performances?
Yeah, so the big one was Alan Donald's. That was huge. That signing, and there was a lot of buzz around the league, I think, with him signing on.
Yeah.
And I still remember him he was cleaning up teams for fun. And there were stories of, some of the clubs wetting the foot marks on one side, and so he'd come around the wicket and still clean up. And so Bomber had this great idea that he'd put loam over our wicket, or the topsoil over the wicket, without anyone knowing, I think. So we turned up. I remember turning up and said, what layer over the top of the wicket that ended up playing, like, it was horrendous. Some were shooting along the ground, others were like kicking up. It was a nightmare. I reckon I think he bowled 13 overs straight from the clubhouse, and I reckon I faced 12.3 overs of it. I reckon. I nearly got through, and then I loved one. I think we got knocked over about 90, and then we had them like 7 or 8 down, and he ended up hitting 6 to win the game. I think he just crept over the line. But so there was him. Franklin Rose was an interesting cat.
Last game of the season was phenomenal. That's 96. Yeah. Frank came back in the dressing room, didn't he, and said, "He's just threatened to kill him. Just shoot him."
What can you remember about that, Flags or Blaise? Just talk us through that last game.
I think Franklin Rose had fallen out with Andy Barker. Andy Barker was captain of Enfield, weren't he?
Yeah.
And there were rumours that they hadn't eventually got on very well. I think, were we batting second in that game? And we got somewhere near creeping up to their total, but then most of our top 5 or 6 had got out, and Frank had gone into bat. And Frank is used to just winding people up, and he was in the middle of his wind-up merchant sort of phase, really. Franklin Rose had sort of lost the plot with Andy Barker during the game, and he seemed to be sort of like feeding Frank, 4 balls, and Frank just kept clattering them. And Andy Barker's exasperated, throwing his hands up, and old Frank came in and said, Franklin Rose has just threatened Andy Barker that if he didn't shut up, he would shoot him.
That's his own captain.
Yeah.
We were chasing 171 that game, and we top scored with 47 extras. I think it was firing him in all directions with Franklin Rose.
Anything else around that season, Flags, or anyone else on there before we move on?
Roger Harper was great. I still remember him. The fields that he used to bowl to it wasn't a normal mid-on and mid-off. It was extra wide mid-off and extra wide mid-on, short leg, silly mid-off, slit gully, and then he'd bowl and just extend his arms like an albatross, and he was unbelievable. But it was so good, playing against him.
I can remember a game, Jez. The one where we'd got an early wicket at church. And you done your research, and Neil Johnson were walking in. Neil Johnson were walking to crease and Jez informs us he's right-handed and piss pokes about. We're out for 121 with 17 overs left.
Left-handed.
Batting left-handed, yeah.
Left-handed.
Yeah, I do. I don't know where I got that from. I might have been thinking of Ben Johnson.
He didn't piss poke about either, did he?
Phil Simmons was the other one as well.
Yeah, he prodded. Yeah, Rishton, weren't they?
Yeah, so it was 96, that one, I think. Simmons played, didn't he?
It was at Rishton 95.
95, yeah.
Yeah.
Did we win that Neil Johnson game, Stanley? Were you? I had a look at that. I think
no.
Did we not? I'm
No.
sure I've read the wrong thing. I'm sure you ended up 2-0 out and won.
That were at home, that.
That were all.
Yeah, right. we were something like 110 for 8 chasing 160, and Matt and Chippy got us win 2.
Yeah.
And then cometh the hour, cometh the man. Might have been my first runs at season, that about September. So that were off Neil Johnson, yeah, hitting for 2, yeah.
Yeah, that was the last game of the season, that was, Stanley, yeah? And you've...
Yeah. I didn't score many runs, so I weren't renowned for me prowess with a bat, Jez.
No, but you won the game.
Although I hit Neil McGarrell for 6, if you want to research. I can't remember when that was. He played Test cricket.
The Rishton away game, Blaise, I think, where you got a couple of wickets. Can you remember that?
No.
Oh, no.
Oh, no.
Okay.
No. Phil Simmons.
Yeah.
So when you, a bit like me putting, you got a bit of the yips after about 5 balls because your arm weren't used to it. And I just dropped one short, and I just went, oh shit. he rocked back and just waited for it.
We all ducked.
Everybody ducked. He hit it, and he hit it straight at Ryan. We caught Ryan Esker.
Pesky caught it.
Yeah, caught it at mid-wicket, and as soon as he hit it, he went, oh no!
But then that year, we always, because we rated ourselves, we've got some decent amateurs, and then you get a good pro in like Flegler, underneath, I think certainly likes of me and Blaise, probably the older end, and Stan would always want a good cup run. Once again, if you look at that year, we got absolutely stuffed by Haslingden, I think, away. Anyone recall that at all? Stanley, you?
It was at home, weren't it? I think it was home.
Oh, yeah, it was, yes. At home.
I can remember us, probably mentality at club at the time, but I can remember us joining Haslingden at home and sort of some committee members being a bit happy about it, that, they didn't expect us to do anything in cup, so they were happy that we'd drawn Haslingden because we might get a 300 or 400 quid gate just from that one game, and that was sort of the mentality, which I can remember thinking at the time. Well, we've had a decent start at season. If we'd have got someone a bit more likely to beat, we could have had that cup run. Yeah. But I can remember a couple of committeemen being happy about us joining Haslingden, which sounds strange. And I can remember us being in that game for a while, but the wicket were really quick, weren't it? It was Lowerhouse style, and Paul Rifle. Paul Rifle had stand on helmet, didn't he? And Dave Wally had to clean up all plastic off Stan's broken helmet when I went into bat. But I can remember Rifle being particularly quick that day.
Yeah, it is coming back there, batted first 191. Flegs, you got 6 for there again, 21 overs.
I bet we had him about 70 for 6 at one stage, something like that.
Yeah, and then, so that is the game, is it, with Stan and the helmet?
Yeah, we're quick that day with Rifle.
Yeah. Anyone else remember anything about that day?
I didn't play. I think it was a rained-off game from the week before. I think it was a replay day.
Stanley, can you remember what Stan did when he played against Rifle the second time after he'd been hit on his helmet?
Well, some wag, I don't know who it were, put a plaster on his helmet, like a cross plaster in the middle of Stan's helmet, and just before he went out to bat, so he didn't realise and put it on. And I mean, we all thought it was funny, but poor Rifle didn't, did he? And it was poor Rifle absolutely adamant that Stan would take piss out of him, and Stan didn't know he had this big X marks the spot in the middle of his helmet. Yeah, I can remember that. Yeah, the week before when he were bowling that quick Rifle, I went out to bat with Chippy, and we were about 80 for 9, and Bobby Grimshaw. We played a few overs back of Barry Knowles, and I think Blomley were bowling. We put about 10 on me and Chippy, and Bobby Grimshaw just said, "Oh, I won't throw up." And I said to Chippy, I said, "Fuck this." So I tried to hit Barry Knowles for a few sixes and got stumped after, I think, first ball, not facing him when we needed 100 to win.
Yeah, you did. So did we ever find out who put the crosses on Stan's helmet, Stan, eh?
Well, no, Dave Worley said it weren't him.
Well, that'll do then, that'll do.
We all come from Lowerhouse, a little village town. Everybody knows us from our unique sound. We will sing a song for you and even fill your ground. Buy your ale and swell your purse, 'cause we stop the shares are going down.
Right, so Stanley, you being a star on this, your memory is unbelievable for us. So it's.
I won't say that. These are things that go wrong for me, Jez. So it tend to stick with me.
Right. So
Stanley,
then,
did you come up to Middlesbrough with us when we went to VE Day?
I did. That were
a trip and a half, weren't it? That?
Got out of control quick. Did that one, didn't it?
In 95, it was VE Day, 50th VE Day.
all right.
And Fleggs said, "Well, I'm going up to Middlesbrough, like Bank Holiday Monday probably." Said, we played. And he said, "We're going to go up to Middlesbrough and see his pals from where we were playing there." And they were playing a proper league game because they were playing the league game on the Bank Holiday Monday.
Yeah.
So I don't know whether Fleggs had already been up there. I think Fleggs had gone up there on his own, and there were like 5 of us going up there. Me, Stanny, Payne, your Matthew, Chippy, and
Brock definitely went.
Yeah.
Because I don't think me and Prox were ball went straight in bar and never come out.
We had to flip a coin for who was driving, and your Matthew won, well, lost as it turned out. He had to stay sober whilst we were drinking. I think it were like VE Day prices, so it were like 2 pence a pint. As you say, we saw very, very little of the cricket. It was a very good standard, but we didn't see that much of it.
There was a guy there who played first-class cricket, and he ended up backing his wife off home or his bird off home so he could stay with us for a couple of hours. Glenn something, what are he called? Glenn
Denning. Was it John
Glenn Denning, yeah.
Yeah.
He ended up staying with us for a while. I can remember him being good company.
I thought Matt might have disappeared into Middlesbrough and found another hotel for you.
He must have had to be somewhere on Tuesday because he was not happy.
No. I've just got the list of professionals up for '96, and you look on there, Ben Johnson, 1,700 runs that year.
Yeah,
That's phenomenal, weren't it? Joe Scuderi, 1,300, Brad McNamara played, Dan Marsh, Harper, Motti, Chris Harris. There's some significant.
Chris Harris, what a player he were.
Yeah. What's your memories of that season, Fleggs? You personally didn't do as well as you did in the first year. I think we did. We did well. We held our own, and again it was a tight league, and we finished at 6th again. What was your memories for that, Fleggs?
Yeah, I don't think we started off as well. Yeah, and personally, I couldn't get a run or take a wicket for ages, actually. So pretty disappointed. We'd started something the season before, and really looking forward to building on that. And that was pretty frustrating, particularly that first half of the season.
Did you find it difficult having had the first year to come back the second year? I've not really spoken to many people about this. We've done 1 or 2 of these with pros who've done more than 1 year. When you come back the second year, obviously you're a bit more familiar with what you're going to face. It can change. The weather can change, can't it? Teams can change, pros can change. And whilst you're expecting possibly to have a little bit more knowledge, it doesn't take a great deal for what you're facing to be very different.
Probably a little bit of that, and then the other players know you a little bit better as well. So
yeah,
time around maybe they're a little bit more cautious. Yeah, so it's probably a bit of both. That I was expecting to do better. Probably other players had seen a bit of me the year before, and whether they decided to sit on me a little bit with the ball and realised I was just a slogger and I'd get out after a few dot balls as well.
Was that the season? Was that the season when asked you to bowl a bit more Chinaman? Was that? Am I wrong about that?
Yeah, at home I was doing that. Yeah, so I was bowling, orthodox and Chinaman. So I was a bit confused what I wanted to do, and but it's not an excuse. You're getting paid to play the game and win games, and that expectation. It's more the expectation that you put on yourself. First season, I don't know. I think it's really important. Those first few games, you actually have to prove yourself to your teammates and to the club that signed you. And in '96, I wasn't doing that, so I felt that pressure. But it was, I was disappointed that I wasn't doing that because I felt like we'd actually made a really good step, and I was hoping to build on that.
What's your memories of '96, Gary? Just looking at the averages, they're not as good. Our averages, I'm talking, albeit Blaise got 704, Nicky and Matt got 300 and quite a few, but we didn't get the runs that we did get, and also we didn't get as many wickets as we did in '95. What's your memories of that '96 season, Gary?
Yeah, I can't remember a great deal about the start for some reason. I think generally overall '96. I think the thing that was, I've been really pleased with sort of like the bowling unit, particularly. I think we wanted to try and focus on how do we get another 15-20% runs out of 5 or 6 amateurs. How can we do that? And it's difficult to coach that sort of stuff very quickly. So I can't coach it because I'm not a coach, but in terms of how we would do that. I think we tried to get better practice wickets on the square and things like that at that point to try and help that and try and replicate some sort of match day conditions.
Yeah,
it just didn't come off. I don't know the reason for that really. Whether again we just didn't have the match situations for people to get a decent run at a decent innings. I can't remember a lot about the early part of that season. I don't think.
I was just looking. We did quite well early on in the season. We won quite a few, and then went and really tailed off quite badly. I mean, Flegler, you got 159 in one game. I'm just looking for that. Can you remember that one?
That one that got washed out.
It was against Accrington. No, we'll come on to that one.
Yeah, right.
That's 144 runs, weren't it, against Todd, weren't it? That got washed out.
Yeah, it was 150 odd against Accrington. It was probably a couple of weeks before.
I can remember most seasons around then that we used to do well early on in the season because of the style of bowling attack, and if the wickets were a bit softer and seemed about it, we did seem to be quite successful. And then as it dried out, we weren't as quite successful. But also I used to think the fixtures used to stiff us as well, because the 3 big teams, Raslin and Nelson and Baker, and we used to play them over. We used to play all them 6 fixtures over a 3-week period. So we'd always have a really tough period in middle.
Burnley
if you look at the fixtures, we used to get Shaft there playing Scuderi and all them guys back to back to back. It was tough. I don't think we used to lose every one of them, but we're always going to have that run just because of how it was set up. I think Rishton were thrown in there as well.
Yeah, it was. I mean, I think '96 was a wetter summer than '95. I think we did get the best of the weather the year before. And then it was relatively early, 26th of May, Flegs, when you got that 144 at home against Todd. And I think Gary mentioned it. Gary, you opened the batting with Flegs on that game. And didn't you mention previously about where Flegs was stood when he was facing their bowling attack?
Yeah, I think once he got in the zone, he was stood a yard, 3-4 feet outside leg stump, sort of just daring him to then. Because there was a shorter boundary, which they were clearly trying to protect, or bowl to the longer boundary, and I'd not seen anything like that. Just sort of larruping them, from inside out, from a yard outside leg stick. It was amazing, fantastic innings, clean hitting. Not edges everywhere or just trickling over at boundary or a load of drop catches. Fantastic stroke play, real clean hitting, 360-degree shots. It was a fantastic inning.
Yeah. Can you remember the fielder coming from long off to give the bowler advice? Can you remember that? We were all rolling around laughing. How are you supposed to bowl at this? It's like, what you want to do is, you just get, wherever they bowl it, we're going over the wall, weren't you?
And then unfortunately the rain came and that got washed out, and your 140 odd got washed out, Flex, because you got a duck in the next game.
Stupid rule.
I mean, and that year was where Motti pro'd at Church, I think, that year, before he came to pro for us. Did you know Motti? You will have known him then, wouldn't you? Because you played some cricket with him back in Australia.
Yeah, I mean, I first met Motty, actually, I'll just tell a story about that when I got a duck. So Dan Marsh was the pro at Todd, and apparently they'd spoken about it and said, if we get legs out for a duck, we're going to do a dead ant on the pitch. Sees me getting out, and you can see fielders doing a dead ant. So Dan Marsh is now an assistant coach in Cricket Tasmania for the women's team. So he still brings that up sometimes. But Motty I met, he's a couple of years younger than me, but I met him, he would have been 14, 15, Queensland schoolboys team. Yeah, I've known him for a bit over 30 years. Yeah, so we spent a fair bit of time that next year he was living with Nick Westwell. Yeah, we spent a bit of time. He ran up the back after we played against each other at Lowerhouse, had a couple of pints, and I was following him back to his house. We were going out for the night. I remember it was a little bit slippery. And I could see him. He's like a goldfish, mate. He can't concentrate for too long. So I could see him in the rear vision mirror. He was trying to sort out the radio, the stereo on the car, and it was a little bit slippery. He's coming up to the stoplight, and I slowed down, and he looked up and didn't put the brakes on in time, just bang into the back of me. So he had this little red Ford Festiva or something. So there's a big dent in the boot, in the bottom of the car. So I had to get out and push that down. So it made no indent in my Painters and Dockers station wagon that I had from Chippy's. Yeah.
Brilliant. I mean, we're hoping to get Motty on so we can have a good catch up with him. Ryan mentioned that he's not even dafter, which I find difficult to believe. That's what Ryan Harris said.
We played them at our place, church at our place. We didn't get a great score, I don't think, and Motty were getting plenty of runs against us. And there were a bit of a jibe between Shawn and Motty. Motty smashes the ball in the air, and I think you were at mid-off or something like that, Fleg, and Jez were bowling, and there were nobody going to get in your way from catching that. You had to turn and run behind you, and nobody, it didn't matter how many were going to get, you were going to catch Motty out that day, and it was just, okay, we got beat, but I mean, that just like summed up there were a lot of Australians, weren't there, in that season? I don't know whether it was an Ashes tour or whatever, but it just seemed to be week after week we were playing, two Australian mates and sort of thing.
Yeah, Scott Williams played.
Scott Bradley Williams.
Yeah, very loose.
You were mad.
Yeah.
But that's that game. That's when Stanny dropped Motty.
Been a good one. Been a worldie. Probably told me about Circle then.
Yeah. Talk us through that, Stanny. What happened?
Fleg's bowler left arm Chinaman, which we're begging to be it.
Right.
And Motty hit it directly above his head. I mean, it did go high. It did go straight up. And I seem to remember not going into the best of positions to catch it, really.
Where did you?
It was right down my throat, and it hit my chest and hit my feet. And before I could recover it, it hit the ground.
Oh dear.
And then he hit the next three onto groundsman's up. All three onto groundsman's up roof, one after the other.
It was one of the first times, like cricket had started to just move on, weren't it? And he hit 3 slug sweeps over my head at groundsman's up. Yeah, they were big hits. And, me and Flegs were good mates at the time. I realised why I used to have to buy all Alabama Slammers in Panamas now, because if you were only getting 3,200 quid or whatever Renners were paying him, it would have been a tough gig. But he called me. He called me an incompetent fuck. That was my mate. So as he went on that tirade, I thought, I'm going to tell everyone what he said to me. Them Sheila's in Panama's on Thursday night. When he said to him, I'm from Queensland where the sun shines free. Apparently it's gone up, Stanley. It's gone up.
He denies that, but he did. And it worked. But yeah, I'm from Queensland where the sun shines free.
I wouldn't take it personally, Stanley, that Flegs had fallen out with you. It's because it was Motty.
I didn't, because I got Motty out next over, so it went on my telly anyway, Jez.
Yeah, exactly. Right, exactly.
fast bowlers union.
Yeah.
Very, very slow medium pace union, should I say.
But again, that
And Fleggs had to do some extra jobs, didn't he, Stanley? When he was living at Matt's, he used to polish his sideboard, didn't he, at one stage? Didn't he do that?
What about
his favourite little chore is polishing Matt's sideboard?
I can remember. Can you remember, Fleggs? Yeah. Can you remember John Hampshire, umpire?
Yes. Well,
Fleggs were mates with his son, so he invited him out. He invited him down to Burnley. We had a night out and we got absolutely shit-faced. And this John Hampshire's son was sleeping on settees at Matt's. I was asleep in the chair and Fleggs and Matt must have gone to bed. Or we thought Fleggs and Matt had gone to bed. And me and John Hampshire's son are and the door comes open and a woman from next door walks in. So what are you doing? And what they'd done, they dug Prince Street up. They must have been putting a new drain in or something. And this woman walked me and John Hampshire's son up, dragged us outside, and Matt were asleep in where they dug the road up. It was like lead on one of them yellow water pipes, fast asleep. So we had to drag Matt out to gutter, drag him back in house. But yeah, John Hampshire's only met him once. to drag Matt out at gutter in Prince Street.
I mean, I've nothing else down to 96. Is there any other games or stories or anything that anyone else wants to discuss?
Can't remember the game. We talked about this the other week on a podcast, Shawn's intensity, and sometimes dressing room took a bit of a dent, or some kit bags or an odd batter 3. And I can't remember the game. The only time I saw him really come close to lose it on the pitch was we were at home. You were bowling over the wicket for some reason. You got an LBW claim. As far as you're concerned, like every pro, it were out. Not stone cold sober, out. And this guy, the umpire, said he couldn't give it out because you'd stepped in front of him. Now, there weren't many small umpires in the league, but you were only 4'6" in your Cuban heel. And the incredulity of you saying that he couldn't see over you to make this decision, and I think I had to step in because Matt then wanted to get involved from first split on the pitch. As Jess said earlier, really sort of encouraging, motivational, and determined, and led from the front really in that respect.
You handled me pretty well, Jez, to be honest. I didn't like not bowling most of the time, but you handled me very well, so thank you, because I was probably a pretty shit guy to captain, I'd imagine.
No, I don't think so. No, not at all.
No, he's certainly a great player to play with, and the memories that you've had there, and maybe we should have had Matt on for that few months that you stopped at Prince Street with him. We could get some more stories out.
I stayed with him for the first season.
Oh, was it the first season?
Yeah.
Yeah, you did, because I think when he picked you up from airport, I think the first time we clapped eyes on each other was down at Lowerhouse, and I'm smashing all the wet, damp plaster off the homeroom changing rooms, and it's probably doing about £500 worth of improvements in the process. And you walked in, I can remember the look on your face, saying, "Where am I? Is this the Drangsman's Hut or something?" And this is your home changing room. It was like, okay, can only get better from here, sure.
The change room was the interesting. I mentioned Phil Simmons before, and I reckon it was one of the worst cricketing days of my life playing against Phil. He scored, I reckon he got 150 against us, and they got 290 or something. I reckon, Gaz, you told me that I was going to open to try and chase it down. I got out pretty cheaply to Phil as well, so I think we got knocked over pretty cheaply. And so I was pretty dejected sitting in that change room, and it was shared showers, wasn't it? So
yeah.
Everyone else had gone up into the bar to have a beer, and I sort of wandered into the shower, feeling pretty sorry for myself, and there was just Phil lathering himself up afterwards. I just topped it off. The worst go on, Phil. Thanks. Big man.
Blaise, is there anything else? Is there anything you want to put on before I finish it up?
No, the intention wasn't it, to sign Shawn for the third season, wasn't it? everything, was going in the right direction. We wanted to sign Shawn for the third season, but that's when the regulations came in, weren't it, about first class games?
Yeah, I do remember that. Can you, how late in the 96 season were you told about that, Shawn?
It was really late. I reckon it was when it was the first sort of MOU was being signed, but like the Australian Cricketers Association. And so Tim May was the head of the Cricketers Association, and I just remember getting an email from him or a call from him saying the rules have changed. You've got to have played so many games for your state to go and play league cricket. That's not going to help me. Can't do it. So I think we looked into whether being 12th man would qualify, because I was 12th man for a lot of games. That didn't seem to matter. Could go. I was going to go to Brazil on the way over this time as well to a mate's wedding. So I was devastated.
Oh dear.
You do.
Extremely disappointing, extremely, especially bearing in mind the professional that we did get. But anyway.
Well, I'm going to say there weren't much you could slip through, but he managed to slip through them regulations, didn't he?
Yeah, for definite. Anything else from yourself, Gaz?
All been said, really. I think it was just I remember it being a really enjoyable 2 years on and off the pitch, not just the match day cricket, just the feeling that collectively things have moved forward. We were definitely a better club 2 years after, Shawn turned up, and a better set of players and better outlook on cricket individually. And I dare say, if we'd have had the sort of amateurs that were knocking around in the 2000s, late 2000s and early 2010, Shawn's a professional with all sort of performances on those days. I think, those would have been championship winning sides, not a problem. It wasn't a reflection of Shawn that we didn't win anything. The number of times through that decade that you can look at and say, yeah, that wasn't revolutionary. It was a start of then with the Stan bringing the youngsters through, that things turned for the better.
I think if you look at it sort of chronologically, that season, the 96 season, was when Charlie made his debut in 96. And, obviously Charlie's generation of Rugrats, Gav, Matt Marquis, Little Stanny to a certain extent, but not, as Paul would testament, not a big extent. But it was that next generation of our cricketers that sustained us through to the early 2000s. And it was very important that they had a role model like Shawn at practice when they were 15, 16, that I think made them aware of what it took to be a professional cricketer, a demanding professional cricketer, of the standards that they had there. And no sort of coincidence that Charlie came to be one of the best fielders in the league, not only with natural talent, but by how hard he worked, at practice, from those early days.
The beginning.
16.
Yeah, without a doubt. Without a doubt. Stanley, anything just to want to sum up, to round it off before I get on to Flegs?
Well, if you can ever, the nice thing I can say about it is, if you could ever be transported back, that's a period I'd like to go back to, sort of 90, because it was a pleasure to play with Flegs, but also, these things had changed. Like, I wouldn't have liked to have got nicked again like I did in 92, or I wouldn't have liked to get engaged to a lunatic like I did in 1994. But the main points of it were, like I say, it was just so pleasurable, and especially 95, 96. My two favourite years at Lowerhouse, bar none,
Yeah, without a doubt. And I can only echo that, Flegs. Is there anything else you want to sum up, Flegs, before I close this podcast?
Look, I said at the start, I absolutely loved playing at Lowerhouse. It was a great family club. You guys made me feel extremely welcome from the first night I turned up. So, thank you very much. Because you want to go over and play good cricket, but you want to meet good people and have a great time as well. I certainly met some outstanding people and had a great time on and off the field. It was brilliant. Yeah, I still can't believe it's 25 years. Is
it scary?
Yeah. Not bitter about Stanny's catch still then? No.
He actually asked to come on. He hadn't invited.
Very fair.
Yeah.
I need closure.
I needed some closure around it. All right then, Flegs, thanks ever so much for appearing on the Housecast. It's really appreciated. All the fans will enjoy listening to you, and the younger fans that didn't watch you play, I'm sure they would look at your figures now, and if we can reiterate to them, try and emulate what this lad did, how keen he was for the club. Thanks ever so much, Flegs, for coming on here and joining us, and hopefully we'll speak soon, and next time in the UK I'm sure you'll come and visit us. Thanks very much, Flegs.
We have improved the dressing rooms as well. They are habitable now.
Yeah.
But Panama Jaws is shut, Flegs.
Gordon, send Morehouse to save the house.